Hi folks, here we are in installment number 2 of our tutorial 5, our exercise 5 video series. In installment number 1, we looked at our geometry, looked at the solid model, looked at some of the numbers associated with this particular part. We developed a machining strategy for this part that resulted in an operation list consisting of 3 distinct setups, as you can see over here on the right. Each one of those setups we analyzed for the required tool paths necessary to execute that part. And then we determined the tools we would need and generated a tool list complete with tool type, as you can see, solid or square end mills, spot drill, drill, tap. We have a total of 9 tools with tool numbers. Each one has a specific OD, number of flutes, length of cut, overall length, which would give us the reach we need, especially to get to the bottom of this large pocket over here, and or to the underside of these holes. We then proceeded to specify our surface speed here, and we determine appropriate chip loads for our tools, and we used Excel to calculate RPMs and feed rates for those tools. So what we're going to cover in installment 2 is we're going to set up Mastercam, the environment with our solid with the appropriate planes necessary to make this part, with the appropriate setups. So we'll set up tool path groups, and we'll leave this installment at that high level setup before we dive into creating actual tool paths. So our goal is to end up with a solid imported into Mastercam where we have 3 distinct setups over here on the left. We have our machine defined with our machine properties and our stock properly set up. We'll enable our planes tab, and we will set up our second and third operations. For second operation like so, third operation like so, and we'll have all of our coordinate systems and work offsets for all 3 operations set up. We'll have a structure that includes the 3 setups. We'll have a machine, and we'll have our solid model. And that's where we'll call this second installment complete. So let's fire up Mastercam, new blank slate. We're going to turn our axes on if you like to see our axes, and our gnomons. We're going to make sure our planes and our tool paths managers are active from our view tab at the very least. That way we have our tool paths and our planes windows that we can toggle between down here. So first things first, let's bring in our solid model. Now there's 2 ways of doing that. If we already have Mastercam open and it's completely blank, we can just hit open up here. We don't want to save this. We can navigate to wherever we have our solid model stored, which is right here. Now, very important, before we actually import this into Mastercam, we want to find the options window here. We want to make sure that we're importing solids. We definitely need our edge curves checked. And if you choose, you can use system colors to import. I don't think that's really necessary unless you have different surfaces, walls, features colored differently in SolidWorks, for example, and then you want to use those colors in Mastercam to isolate features, but that's beyond the scope of what we're doing right now, so you can leave that unchecked. Hit the green check mark and then hit open. And that brings in this part oriented in a way that is not ideal for our situation. So first thing we need to do is reorient that part. So we're going to go to our Transform tab like we usually do when we're moving geometry around. And we're going to translate to plane right here. And it's asking us to make a selection. So we're going to window select our entire solid and selection. And now we need to identify what our source plane is and what our destination plane is. So how do we do that? Let's X or cancel out of this operation and let's figure that out. So the quickest way is to turn your planes on, and this G column allows you to orient your part according to various planes. So we want to be working in top plane. That's this plane here. But currently, this particular surface is oriented as our back plane. So what we need to do is we need to take our back plane and orient it into our top plane. So we want this particular view or plane to be oriented in our top plane. So let's go back to translate, and remember, we need to remember that we're talking about back. Translate, translate to plane. Again, select everything, window select, and selection. We want to go from our back plane to our top plane. We want to make sure we check the move radial box as opposed to the copy and hit OK. And now when we change our view to top, our model is oriented correctly. Now right click, always clear colors. Right click, clear colors right here. Now let's check our drawing. And you can see that our default orientation, if I zoom in here, has the sort of larger leg of this cross in the positive X direction. So we need to rotate this solid 180 degrees. So we're going to, again, in our Transform tab, we're going to rotate. Select, window select our entire model, and then change the angle to 180. Make sure you hit the radial button that says move instead of copy, and hit your check mark. Right click as usual, clear colors. So now we have our XYZ origin, our G54, our work offset for setup 1 defined. We can hit isometric, we can hit right click, top view. This orientation is now correct. Now, while we're here, let's go ahead and orient op 2, which will be this corner right here. In this orientation, so we need a plane there, with this being our Z0, this top surface here. So let's go ahead to our Planes tab. Down here, we need to activate our Planes tab. If there is no Planes tab here, remember, up here in View, we need to turn it on. Planes tab, new coordinate system, new plane. We're going to make a new plane with the plus button. Click the plus button and choose from the plane creation strategies, choose from geometry. Now I need to select 2 edges that are going to define my XY plane. So it'll be these 2 edges, 1, 2. And you can see that it creates a plane with 8 orientation options. So I can click my arrows here to cycle between the 8 options. The option I'm looking for is Z positive up, and I want my X positive off to the right and my Y positive up. I find that orientation, hit the green check mark. I can rename my plane right here. We'll call that setup number 2. Hit my green check mark. So now I have my setup number 1 plane. And you'll notice when I click in the G column, it controls my orientation. I can also hit top view, which is the same thing. So right click, top view. I have my normal view to my working coordinate system, or I can hit here, the G, normal view to my working coordinate system. I'm looking at my coordinate system coaxially to the z-axis. So I have setup number 2. I can activate my work coordinate system here in my planes menu and my view. You can see top right or bottom right hand corner, I have an XYZ work offset here. Now I need to set up number 3 work offset, which will be this corner right here. So I like to always start from my default or my master offset plane, which is my top. I'll orient in the direction I want. I know I'm going to be picking these 2 edges. Hit the plus from geometry. Select edge 1 and edge 2. Cycle this until I have the right orientation, which is my Z normal and positive up, X positive to the right, Z positive, or Y positive facing up. Hit the green check mark, call this setup number 2. And hit the green check mark. Oh, sorry, that should be, rename that to setup number 3, my bad. So I have setup number 2, setup number 3, and top, which is my setup number 1. Orientation 1, work coordinate system 1, orientation number 2, work coordinate system number 2, orientation number 3, work coordinate system number 3. Okay, that's all of the planes I need. And remember, save your work often. Now, back to Toolpaths tab. I now have my solid model imported into Mastercam. I have my 3 setups defined. My work offsets are defined. Now I need to choose a machine. So I'll go to my machine tab, find my machine. Remember, it's going to be the GR. Oh, look at that, crash report. Glad I saved. Well, we'll let this fire down and we'll start another instance of Mastercam and try again. That's why I tell you guys, save often. Even when you don't think you should be saving. If you've made any progress, save it. Open. Navigate to my exercise file. Open. Here we are. Okay. Machine. Mill. Haas GR. Yes. Now I have a machine group. Let's rename that machine group so we're clear here. Haas GR 510 properties. Let's deal with those. Open my files. Nothing for me to do in here unless I need to change my machine. Open my tool settings. I'll call this program number 5. I'm going to check my assigned tool number sequentially and put my overrides on. Go to my stock setup. Now I'm going to assume you guys know how to face. I'm going to assume you know how to profile. So let's assume that we are given a piece of stock whose overall dimensions match what we need here. So we're not going to do any facing or profiling. That being said, I can click the All Solids button here, and my stock boundaries will define themselves based on my current stock setup. But in order for this to make any sense, we need to make sure we're in our master coordinate system here. So let's go back to our top plane, make sure we're working in setup number 1, which is our top plane. And now set our stock up, all solids. So you can see our boundary here. Okay, so I have my property set up, my stock is set up, my machine is set up. I have 2 toolpath groups here for some reason. I'm going to delete that second one. So toolpath group number 1, we can right click that and call that setup number 1. We're going to create 2 more setups here, 2 more toolpath groups, and we're going to make those toolpath groups inside of our machine. So we're going to keep working in our Haas GR 510 after we finish setup number 1. We're going to work in there for setup number 2, and we're going to work in there for setup number 3. We're not putting this part in a different machine, so we don't require a new machine group. If I right click on my setup number 1 and create a new toolpath group, I'm not able to do that. If I right click on my machine and go to groups, I'm able to create a new toolpath group. So I need to do that. I need to make new setups in the current machine. So I'll rename that setup number 2. Enter, right click on our machine, group, new toolpath group, and then I will rename that to setup number 3. Okay, I have 3 toolpath groups, 1 for each one of my setups. They're contained within my Haas GR 510 machine. I have stock set up. I have 3 working coordinate systems here. My top plane for setup number 1. My setup number 2 plane for setup number 2. And my setup number 3 plane for setup number 3. Hit save. Now I've set up my environment. I've set up my geometry. In this case, it's solid model rather than wireframe geometry. I've set up my operation plan. And I've set up my required coordinate systems or work offsets. So we'll leave it here for installment number 2 in our exercise 5 video series. Check the next installment for setting up our tool list and starting our toolpath generation. Stay healthy. We'll see you in the next installment.